Good afternoon, dear friends. I am happy to welcome everyone. Today, we shall talk about the way this area, financial system, is so strongly dependent upon education. We understand that technologies do not come of their own volition. They are being created by people, and essentially the future financial system is all about people. But simultaneously, we all talk about a shortage of skilled labor, that education is not able to keep up with the technological development. Like in the central bank, we see that we need specialists for the financial sector, the kind of specialists at the juncture of things, the kind of people who are knowledgeable about technology. For example, experts on AI who possess competencies in the area of information security, but you can't find them in the open daylight. If there are any available, there is so much struggle for taking them. And that brings about big costs, additional costs, higher payroll, and we feel there is a divide between our need as an employer and what the educational system is able to produce and the competencies set around the people who are graduating various educational institutions. And I would like to talk about how to eliminate this divide, how to play ahead of the course of events, and what the financial system itself can do in order to find a resolution to this problem of a shortage of stuff. And indeed, the future financial system, its capacity to produce and introduce innovations, I feel, in the first place, depends upon the main problem, not enough people. This is not about spending enough money on technology and our regulation, but an availability of people with respective set of skills. And today we're going to try and find ways to resolve it with our speakers here. Let me introduce them to you. Alexander Auzan, the Dean of the Economic Department of the Moscow State University, the alma mater of many of those here in this room. Stanislav Bliznyuk, the chairman of the board and the member of the board of Tinkoff Bank. Eduard Galazhinskiy, the president of the Tomsk State University. Petr Fradkov, who is the chairman of Promsvyaz Bank. Elena Shmeleva, she is the chairwoman of the advisory board of the Serious Educational Territory and the chairperson of the Talent and Success Foundation. So my first question goes to Petr Fradkov. Promsvyaz Bank, like other banks, is actively investing into making the business digital, and I'm sure that the competition for people with other banks is very tough. Even on your website, there is a promotional slogan saying, bring your friend into IT industry and get the reward. So what do you think is necessary in order for the industry to produce more experts, because this is a shortage that many are feeling, and how your requirements are changing, the ones that you are placing upon the new technology drive, and in view of the fact that our banks are becoming real tech companies, and to what extent the yesterday's graduate coming to work for a bank has to be additionally upskilled, because this is the problem. To what extent it remains, and what do you intend to do about it? Thank you very much, Elvira and dear colleagues. Good day, and thanks so much for the opportunity to speak here at the Finapolis Forum. It is a great event, and if I may, I would like to start with congratulations, because I think it really is worth it. 3 days that have gone by. So many things have been demonstrated. You're very much to the point saying that the banks are already tech companies, strong ones, and the kind of challenges that we all together have been able to overcome, specifically due to the fact that the banking system was fully ready to cope with it. But we need to go further. We understand it. And being a bank and as an employer in our industry, we also find ourselves in the midst of competition. Of course, this is a bit of a half joke. I mean, bring your friend around and get a reward. But this is the tip of an iceberg, as they say, because certainly, so they're not going to be rewarded. That was a joke. Well, let me put it this way. I mean, we are the kind of bank which works with the defense industry, and we've been able to muster many things. Like there is a saying that the best reward is a lack of punishment. You see, so principally speaking, there could be very different motivations amongst our colleagues, but this is rather, the way I see it more like, again, in our banking practices, there is a net promotion score as an indicator by which you measure how many additional customers you were able to bring via a specific customer. If a person working in the bank is eager to bring his friends in, this is not just about the money. This indicates that this particular person finds it extremely comfortable to work in an institution and will be recommending his employer to others, so as not to deviate too much away. Of course, being inside this competition, we understand that we are competing along with other banks for this resource, but the resource has to be divided into three pieces. Ready-made, finished specialists who you don't have to train. I mean, the ones who understand their own value. Maybe sometimes and quite often they over-evaluate their capacity. This is one level of competition. There's a second level of competition, which is where I would say the biggest new wave of competition is taking place. The students, in all of their diversities, and already there is a competition starting for school graduates. One has to be very much aware of it, because this is an endless process, and we're already making a few steps in that direction. So as far as the student core is concerned, let me not specifically talk about the first part of it. It is quite comprehensible. These are ready-made experts, and maybe, by the way, the kind of experts which, one way or another, convert into the student kind of a status, because IT persons' time period is very short, because you have to continuously develop and change. And so if you are an employer, you are able to provide this opportunity and you retain such a person. But as far as the students are concerned, we employ several approaches to it, without doubt. In the first place, of course, this is very much targeting a student. I mean, it's not that you are looking for such a person, but the students are growing used to feel being part of what you're doing. I mean, in terms of the technical language and as far as the programming tools that you use in the banks, and you're able to incentivize people like that, we have a certain form that we use, the School of Digital Roles. It may sound strange, I don't know why, but nevertheless, this is about the students. We have 5 to 6 educational institutions as our partners, the pre-graduates of the 4th or 5th years, who we train specifically on our standards, trying to prepare them very much in line with what we do, covering system analysis and so on and so forth, but educating them in the principles principles of how we do business. And out of this pool, you somewhat connect them to yourself because they pass through a certain period of training and they understand that they would definitely get a job with your institutions and plan accordingly. The second story, a more substantive one, and a very good case, something that we did together with the Russian Financial Monitoring Agency, understanding there is a global problem of the financial security, and we heard it mentioned several times here at this forum. And this is not about IT, because the fin security matter, like any other banking discipline, has already been digitalized, simply because the contemporary life and the modern environment require that. And that constitutes a big tier, which covers so many other issues. For example, we have created a big platform, a big venue, which is a bit of a tech ed, which is online education, but not only from a school classroom and all the way to the third category, where you're already dealing with ready-made experts. This is an integrated platform covering several disciplines, but all related to the financial security, like the quiz games and international Olympics, educational knowledge Olympics. And thanks very much, we conducted it at the Serious Center, self-training, and the third one, looking for an employment, professional orientation, occupational orientation, where from the very beginning, from various competitions, which is necessary to win if you want to surely get into higher education institutions, then identifying the education institution that you want for, and then occupational specifics. And that enables us to raise such of our future employees from classrooms. So clearly, this is a long play and exercise involving certain costs. But if we approach the educational system like that, and we have 20 programs, and I'm sure that the educational institutions are going to adjust their curricula to similar kind of endeavors, and the more of this particular approach is exercised, the more confident we may be in the future. So if you ask us what kind of expectations we may have upon the education, I would say that is the way to adjust, to adapt our programs to suit the content which is being digested by the users of such platform. That is a long-term, lengthy, expensive process, but is the one which is very much worth being busy with. Well, thank you so much. Yes, indeed. In the past, additional education usually would take place after someone would graduate from the university or an institute. And Mr. Fradkov here said that currently it is being done right from the school classrooms. And getting further on that, Stanislav, you are describing your bank as a big academic institution, research institution. And recently, the Tinkoff Bank's team really ventured quite a project, establishing a university. We know that many banks have their own corporate universities, but your bank, I suppose, may be the only one which claims for building a traditional university, entering into the traditional academic education. What for? Tinkoff Bank has basic departments and partnerships with the leading universities. We've got 2 representatives of the leading education institutions. So what is there not enough for you? They're not. Do you expect them to give up on your part? What do you mean by describing your university, the central university? What is it going to be all about, and how are you going to cooperate with other market players? Thanks very much for your question. Well, to begin with, I would like to simply say thanks for the fact that the education and staff training as an issue has been raised to such a top level, because we all know that there's a lot of shortages and people start understanding that top quality, that people, you don't get them from thin air, you don't find them in specific niches. The ones who start earlier working with students and school children are guaranteeing themselves an ability to make sure that they get the best educated and trained people, and that would impact very, very positively upon the business. So we need to really work on this further. Speaking about Tinkoff, we've been for quite some time already in the educational area. One of the first employees back in 2006 was hired through the classifieds at an annual Moscow State University market there, and since we've been the kind of institution that has been promoting this student employment, and so for 40% of our employees we represent the first employer. So when we describe ourselves as a tech institution, yes, we are an extension of the postgraduates and PhD, because 40% of people come to us as a first employment place. That, on the one hand, is a big advantage for ourselves, but also we feel a lot of responsibility, and that means that we've been able to really pull up our skills greatly. We have several representatives here sitting on the panel. All of them we're working with quite actively over the past 5 years through our educational system. About 25,000-30,000 students and school children passed. We have about 400 lecturers and teachers, so we know how to teach and train. But what is the issue that everybody is currently facing? This is a staff shortage, the overall unemployment 3%, and that is indeed a big challenge to all. But speaking about IT people, unemployment there is zero, if not altogether negative. So you can understand, whenever somebody comes into the IT employment area, in about 3 days he gets 5 to 7 offers, and the next one is better than the previous one, because there is a humongous shortage. But what it all boils down to, two consequences. The first one is that the wages are growing, and that is the economic theory. If demand is greater than supply, and that is a big challenge to many companies, because that particular price level is going to be supported only by big, super effective companies and no startups here. And so overall, in certain areas which are less attractive, there respectively would be a shortage of stuff and less efficiency. But there is a second consequence. When you've got such a super shortage, then the quality of your stuff goes down, because overall, why should you study and learn something as long as you can be hired without any upskilling? So understanding that the employment is growing in terms of the price tag, but the quality goes down, we understand there's a problem. Yes, during the current stage of development, we as Tinkoff, with our HR brand and our approaches, we do not feel this to be a problem very strongly. But within the next 3 to 5 years, definitely that will come, and we want to be able to teach and train better than others, and many educational organizations have acknowledged ourselves to be of that quality, because higher education, we treat it as a product. Now, as long as we have confidence amongst the young generation towards us and the industry, why shouldn't we try and do it that way? And that's why we went for it. But we're not just doing it over the board, because we have a very clear understanding of what is our competitive advantage. Maybe exaggerating, not in terms of the order of appearance jokes that you can see. First of all, we're not growing in IT person because everybody is trying to really chase them. I mean, the era of IT people is in the past, because IT is not a specialty. This is a skill which overall is going to do well for you anyway, in finance, insurance, and healthcare, education, in chemistry, in any manufacturing. Everywhere, someone who has a good understanding of IT is welcome. So our first motto is IT is like calculus, because everybody needs to be able to do that somehow. The second big matter is that there are so many educational institutions. Top educational institutions are fewer, and indeed amongst the top educational institutions there is a big competition. Again, following our suit, many other companies have come, and they're trying to work with the pre-graduates. And so this final at the end, about the year 4-5, it's not growing. becoming wider because there are many people coming into it. It is going to become wider if there are more people at the stage of graduation of school. And so our idea is try and to broaden this funnel at the entry point. This is a simple idea. You see, one of the sensors of the top quality of an educational institution is a single exam score, and so 305 scores is unreal to get. So this is difficult. But let's imagine a different case. And actually, I'm referring to myself. I would take mathematics at a score of 100 and would win all of the competition. The physics 80 or 90. It's not because I'm a fool, because I was not really training myself because mom and dad didn't push me for it. But the Russian language as an exam I would take at 60. So the total would be 240, although I got enrolled into the university because I won the competition. But right now I don't really believe that I would be able to get enrolled in any top university with this scoring. But there are so many people like that around. They're by far, bigger in number than 240 scores. And so the second piece to the problem is that we want to broaden this entry funnel at the level of the 9th or 10th year at school to identify certain interests amongst them towards any engineering work, and we're going to provide them with such an opportunity, to be able to grow personally in terms of their personal knowledge capital and to be in demand. Another idea, and this is very important, there is an established practice that somehow somebody graduating from school, he must know whether he's going to be a mathematician, a sociologist, or if he's how can I know it? Because I was preparing myself for ending the school towards the single government exam. And so one of the ideas that we are running around with is that somebody would come, he may be a physicist or an engineer, the way he imagines himself to be, but in terms of his purpose, that would be defined later on during the first or second year at the university, and for that we would like that person to have a broad opportunity to be interned in different corporate partners, and that is an important consideration. It's not some sort of a corporate university. We've got a university with the partners, we've got 30 of them, but our target is to have 100 and 150, but the idea is that for a student during an educational period to get some fundamental skills and pass through a practice-centric education to try different professions in different businesses, so that during the third or fourth year that person would understand what exactly he or she would like to do, so that at the later years to adjust his knowledge set to suit a specific industry. And so that's where this utility would grow, and so this person would be fully ready to be employed by an employer, not just as a basic set of knowledge that we have grown used to see when we employ somebody just immediately out of the university and we train them. So this practical aspect is hugely important. And the third aspect, developing not only hard skills but soft skills as well, because we're currently living in a world where we need to cooperate, where we need to collaborate, where we need to work in a team, to be able to delegate certain tasks, to set priorities, and all skills like that. They are extremely important. So the goal of a university education is to try and grow a person who is in strong demand by an employer, but in as far as a school child is concerned, to try and provide this person with a social lift, and that would be very much to the benefit of everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much. I have a question to you about a financial topic, because I believe that you very correctly stated the overall trending, which in any market is something that is a given. I mean, when demand is oversupply, deficit grows, quality falls. It's a straightforward formula. We do acknowledge it. But speaking about financing, who ultimately has to pay for education, do you believe? I mean, in such a practice-centric approach, in the interests of an employee, a student, a government, an employer, and how the educational costs should be allocated? That's a very good question. All right. One should look at it from different angles. I sincerely believe that education is something that the consumer should pay for. I mean, any product is something that the consumer pays for. So a consumer selects and he likes something, and that's why he pays for it. Fundamentally, consumers here are students. A student who gets an entitlement to really boost his human capital so that in 3 to 5 years to be somebody who will be very sought after and make sure that he's got a great employment for the rest of the life. And so with that in mind, one shouldn't really dole everything out for free, so that a person should be like a currency. He comes around and says, this is what I want to do. And the university institution, whatever they pay for, that is what they can demand. And that would ensure quality. And so from this viewpoint, I guess another important thing is that there's no such thing as a cheap education. And our educational target is about 600, 700,000 rubles a year. But to simply look at a straightforward Excel spreadsheet, like, for example, somebody would listen to 30, 40 hours of lectures a week, while a teacher who gets an average pay in such an educational industry, teaching a group of 15 people, so that would add up to 600,000 rubles without taking into account overhead costs, capexes, equipment. So in our model, we're not looking at this business to make a profit, because we understand that we want to really create an impetus and pull everybody into this, but operationally we want to make this into a process which would pay for itself, because that would ensure longevity. Because if it's not like that, it would be very short-lived. But we don't need 50 developers, 50 engineers. We need 10, 15,000 of them. So it has to pay for itself. And again, right now, I mean, in the past, the shareholders were not very supportive of this idea. Current shareholders are very much strongly in favor of it. So it is important so that in 3 to 5 years' time, we would reach this ability to become profitable. And so a student must pay for it, but at the same time, we have a unique opportunity which somehow is not very much incentivized, the so-called subsidized educational loan, because both for the banks as well as for the educational institutions and students, that could be good solutions when you get a certain amount for 10 to 15 years at 3% interest. And so essentially, when somebody would be choosing this particular path, to upskill himself for the rest of the life, the government would make it available, and we could use this program because we offer a little bit of it. Because apart from the educational loan, you have to pay for the hostel and for a computer. But that would be something that everybody in this country would very much welcome. But the second piece to that whole set is that good quality employee is what an employer really needs. And so in the end of the day, when somebody comes to an employer of good training, and an employer pays for that, because this particular person can quickly get into the business specifics and be effective. So a target setting that we are saying that somebody comes to us, this particular person pays for the education or gets a subsidized loan, he gets an internship, and in a couple of years he must be the kind of an expert so as to be able to fully repay whatever money he or she previously had spent on becoming that kind of person and be ready for the next stage in life. I see. Elena, let me ask you a question. Stepping away from the financial issues per se to the educational system. For many years in this country, we've had the kind of an educational system which in many ways was very much linked to an average level student in a mass education system, not a talent, because as they used to say, the talent will find a way. In your educational center series, you are developing a person-centric kind of a system which is exactly aiming to develop talent and the key qualities of every student, doing it in a kind of a linkage between school, educational institutions. Can this kind of a system be rolled out and scaled out throughout the whole country? And most importantly, in what way? Thanks very much, Elvira, for the fact that you made this topic into the agenda item of the plenary session. We are very much appreciative for the ability to discuss this whole thing here at the Finnopolis, which is taking place annually. Now, speaking about the comprehensive development of the educational system, particularly when we work with the children who are able to demonstrate extraordinary skills, we mean not only the basic educational curricula in schools and educational institutions. We're talking about a comprehensive scholastic system which covers additional training and education, in-depth studies of a subject, a platform that would make somebody follow an individual track, then various competitions and programs put together with industrial operators. So that makes it a comprehensive system. And so what happens is that this system is able to create within itself the specific levels. And then on the one hand, you find a whole kind of a diversity for everybody to be able to demonstrate what he or she is worth for, and also enjoy a very much individual support throughout all of its stages. And so this multi-tier system, multi-level, makes it possible to really go not for an average kind of level, but a very much homogeneous identification of those who are being trained in terms of the needs and their abilities. But with that approach, we may be just narrowed to one class of educational systems. And so the current educational systems are creating various kinds of tools available to some easily, not so easily to others. And that could be done by the teachers. That could be groups for in-depth learnings or various project programs, or regional and a federal level, because quite a lot is currently being done at the federal level in order for every school to be able to join in along with their teachers, with their faculties and students. Now, the series centered developing the national system of identifying and developing talent for the past 8 years, we are becoming aware that more and more schools are joining such federal projects. And of course, we're not talking as much about working with the talented people as with, like what we do, providing methodological support to schools, raising the professional level of teachers. We run the all-Russian competition for school children and additional educational programs using our platform. We have very specific regional centers as our representations in many regions in Russia currently doing this work. So answering the question how to make the whole educational system more individualized, specifically targeting the talent set in every person, I would like to describe 3 areas that we should work. First of all, the responsibility of a school itself, not as much as teachers themselves, but the management team within the educational system. So we need to train managers in the educational system. On the other hand, the government-sponsored policies, so many programs and activities that the government is pursuing, and that is continuing. But you cannot, in as far as all the difficulties that we know of, overcome them overnight, because these have been brewing over years, like a shortage of top-skilled teachers, because that's explained by the level of pay, as well as the reputation of this profession and various non-core workload. We also know that the best regional teachers are concentrating in the super schools, which increase this divide between the schools which are believed to be successful and the average levels. There is a gap between the school education and the higher education and the needs that the industries are feeling, like what we've just heard. So the third area, which is a very important kind of work, when, for example, we would carry on jointly collaborating, this is an involvement of the industry and the government educational institutions in the overall secondary and school education, because that is the only way that you can develop and establish the economy of talents. What does it mean? It's when a breakthrough is produced by innovative decisions by talented people. These are the kind of people who not only have theoretical knowledge, but also certain skills, not only the skills to develop software, but the data analysis and creative thinking. And so within this combination, certain new things emerge. The communication skills, to be able to work in an uncertainty, practical skills, everything that we know of quite well. But the whole issue is when and how this can be produced, because throughout so many years we were going for the topmost indications and scores that would suit the expectations of the top education institutions in the country, because we can hardly imagine how can somebody gain an access to a well-paid job without demonstrating an excellent score during the school time. And that is the way we assess our people, but at the same time there is a great number of researchers in the world which are sure that in order to tap into the talents of a child, one should provide him with the kind of educational conditions that better suit his mental capacities, because it's not all about who are able to memorize everything. So you need to deal with real life tasks, and what I'm just talking about makes the foundation of our serious center education, because child talents can be demonstrated not only during the schooling, but also in various formats such as educational competition or scientific research competitions that we've been running over the past 6 years. And not only us are doing it, because we've, like the Russian Financial Monitoring Agency, the competition that was mentioned previously, and so the Finopolis are promoting new formats of working with students, represents the new elements of such a comprehensive education. And of course, that is the kind of the developing environment. Now, speaking about the industrial operators, we notice it in real life. When the industrial operators interact with the colleges and education institutions and are able to impact the way students are being trained, while the education institutions take up a partnership position, taking into account what the businesses requires, then good quality changes then take place, because you can discern it everywhere, how well the teachers are motivated, how the students are eager to do this or that, and building up this partnership program from the schooling years. And that's the kind of model that we're trying to establish in the territory of the Syria Center, in order to make it into a precedent that would be also reflected in the model for the economic social development in various Russian regions. Now, what kind of curriculums and programs we put together, and they really work well. For example, in 2022, in order to prepare experts at the juncture of mathematics, financial economics, and information technologies, the Syria's University launched a master's degrees for financial mathematics and technology, because in the very same token, this program was put together by the leading banks in the industry who participate in the stock industry, and that is why our students are eagerly being invited to undergo internship. So this has to be a very calm, very consistent and very purposeful policy. In 2020, together with the Bank of Russia, we signed an agreement about the joint development of educational initiatives, FinTech Hub. And so in our lyceum, we put together a class of the scientific practical laboratory where not only the students, but also school children attend. And so this is the combination of the infrastructure and the laboratory structure. So the program of additional education in the Syria Center is related to the payment system, payment innovation, financial cybersecurity, and digital transformation in insurance sector. So that is what our school children are busy with, and they demonstrate successes because we also have AI and big challenges. That's where school children work over real projects from FinTech Hub, the Bank of Russia, Tinkoff, and VTB on a regular basis. They do set such exciting projects within which people, the students were able to set up the biometrics and anti-fraud system, which was presented during the last year's Finnopolis. We also have the lessons of the present. We have this particular series. School children from the 8th and 9th year are dealing with the practical tasks that the technology companies are facing in real-time mode, and that is a very important thing to note, getting advices from the real practitioners. And so throughout 2022-2023, together with Sber and VTB, we have conducted several programs in applying AI and machine learning in financial industries. So as part of the series center course, the experts from Tinkoff Bank are lecturing the application of AI when developing an advisory system in the social networks for educational search and automation processes. So that is basically the occupational orientation, and that is connecting it to the professional training. And of course, these exactly are the elements of the educational system that schools can integrate into their curricula in order to improve the quality of training. And of course, the only thing that I would like to note here, that of course, industrial partners, they must not try and displace educational institutions, schools in the first place, and be responsible for the educational process from A to Z. They must set their tasks and the expectations they need, and the educational centers should then do the rest of it. And if we ask somebody to just hold a lecture or a masterclass, that is not going to be ultimately effective. We need these bridges, these connections in the methodological way which the professional competencies that the businesses have will specifically make it digested and diluted in the schooling and educational process, and that would make this whole thing much more effective and will be conducive to involving and engaging school children into real practical tasks, because they would see what the national economics expects from it and what kind of quality they should attain in order to deal with real issues. We will then improve the incentivization and will raise a responsible, attentive, and very much aware, the kind of people who are going to be very much aware of the kind of future achievements and accomplishments that they're capable of. Well, indeed, many educational centers and the banks are putting together joint projects, and a great example is indeed the Serious Center, because if we speak about the economy of talents, this is the system of education which grows them, without doubt. Elena Vladimirovna was telling us about one of the projects related to AI, and this is what I would like to also speak about. Alexandrovich, you've always been telling interesting stories about long-term trends in the development of technology, economics and society. During the first day here at Finnopolis, we were debating this particular trend, AI, which transforms itself into a basic technology. But very little we said about education related to AI. Now, will AI be capable of making education more agile, more flexible? Now, the gaps between supply and demand for specific expertise, will it be possible to overcome it? Like, for example, Stanislav was talking about the shortage of IT people, but somebody was saying that AI already can help now developing software. So IT may cease to be an occupation, but just a regular skill. And how do you think, apart from the AI, this is a separate thing that I would like you to talk about, principally speaking, how the educational model should evolve in order to be ahead of what's currently happening, because education currently lagging behind the technology drive, and the educational products are below the level of the expectations of employers. We see it in the case of the financial industry. Well, AI currently in the area of education is a disaster, because this is the problem of the generated written work that has to be sifted through and identified and detected. The new rules of the academic ethos, because it is just about now that we're trying to understand how a GPT product could be discerned. We are in a full defense, in a sitting behind the defensive fence, because that can become a catastrophe for the education, because one neural network will identify itself as a professor, a different one will identify as a student, and so your educational certificate can be issued not in the very end of the process, but in the very beginning, because everything is going to be 100% predicted. So I see it as a terrible challenge. Now, can we turn it into an advantage? I feel that it is very difficult because, you know, the kind of problem that we would need to deal with in order for AI not to glutton and eradicate workplaces. Certainly AI must be a competitive tool. We must find our own place in a partnership with AI and resort and reorganize all our educational programs in order to suit that objective. May I explain the way I understand what is needed from us? About 7 years ago, realistically, there wasn't any AI, but we, the economists, were having a debate about what will happen once it's here. The good thing about the Moscow State University is that right near you have the best representatives of any science. And Vyacheslav Dubinin, a famous evolution biologist, was listening to our conversations. And so he told us, when we were discussing the possible advantages of AI, he told us, you know, foxes are much smarter than hares. But over the million of years, foxes couldn't exterminate all the hare. You know why? Because a fox cannot compute the trajectory of how a hare is running. You know why? Because a hare doesn't know where he is going to run. And all of a sudden, I realized to myself that our function of natural intellect is what is founded upon the right hemisphere in the brain, the ability to ask a question, to form a hypothesis, because very soon AI will be much better answering questions than a human intellect. So right now it's generative AI, soon is going to be iterative AI, definitely. But who is going to formulate a question in order to teach human beings in this new function? I feel that we have to very seriously reset educational processes. You know, several years ago, during the Comparative Economics World Congress, I listened to a great presentation by a Chinese professor from Hong Kong on the basis of the digitalized Chinese chronicles over the past 3,000 years. He was able to demonstrate that the success of China's economic wonder was achieved by the coastal Chinese provinces, which sooner than others introduced the civil exam for the government officials. Back in the days of Confucius, it was proposed, like calligraphy, like poetry. So we not only need to move towards soft skills, we also need to move towards something that is described as liberal arts in the international academia, because we're introducing in our faculty some very strange things. We very much promote theatres, musical hours, poetry. So we need to develop the human brain's right hemisphere in setting the problem, in formulating questions. If we are successful in doing so, then we would solve the problem of not only lagging behind, I mean, in the universities lagging behind from what the businesses are doing. I think we'll be able to position a human being in a totally new capacity for the world where there is place for both. the artificial intelligence and human intelligence. Thank you very much, Eduard Vladimirovich. The Tomsk State University, it is working in a competitive environment along with other leading universities, but at the same time, you are not afraid to experiment and achieve great outcomes. The Tomsk University is one of the 6 pilot educational institutions which this year, as tasked by the President, started switching to a new system of higher education. What these changes, what kind of promise these changes bear for the benefit of the financial industry, but be mindful of what Mr. Auzan has just told us about the future of education in view of an emergence of new technologies and how not only education must evolve, but a human being, as far as I understand, as well. Natural human intelligence. And we are interested to learn about it from the practical viewpoint, how that may affect our today's need for talented employees to develop the economy and the financial industry. Thank you very much, Elvira and dear colleagues. It's a great honor for me in this room to share some of my thinking. Indeed, as a result of the presidential task, a pilot experiment has been launched to change educational quality. Effectively, we have entered into a phase where there is a new national higher educational model is being forged. And I shall underscore, there is always a consensus between the regulation and various standards that usually the government agencies are responsible for, but ideologically that is all about consensus in the professional communities with respect to the objectives and the means to achieve the expected outcome. And today's forum and this panel discussion is very important for all the colleagues to understand where we are going and to be fully engaged in designing the new system. It is true that we all, the experts in the educational area, we all discuss how it should evolve into the future. But let me share with you a few stats, because in order to design this new image, during the past 4 years, we ran a big survey, more than 50,000 students, 6 million messages in the social networks, parents and alumni, and so on and so forth. So we don't have enough time for to be interactive. Let me just throw up some questions and you quote to me the figures. So what do you think? What is the percentage of employers are not satisfied by the current higher educational system? 70%. Now, what is the percentage? And actually, the demand for that system is not uniform. There are 3 basic kinds of demands. First, to train per a specific workplace, and here I would single out the education and training, and because corporate universities, they train specific skill sets per specific task. The second big piece is the demand for an expedited employment, because you can't have you don't want to wait for 2 or 3 years for an IT person to be your employee. Then the third one is very complex subject like genome engineer. It's a totally different cost involved, not 250,000 a year, but approximately 800,000 rubles a year in order to train such a person who will be possessing very complex skills. Now, what is the percentage of parents? There is a mass demand for individualization. Now, what is the percentage of students who believe that manifest this approach? Up to 80%. What is the percentage of parents who want their children to have variability? Because in the Soviet days, it was like a funnel. You know, enter into university in 5 years' time, you graduate, and so it would basically work in such a way so that at the level of the 3rd year, people will start moving in between various professional educational programs. Now, currently, there is 93% of parents who want a more flexible, more customized kind of education for their children. There's also an expectation from the government in terms of the generational gap and the benefits that are being lost through that. And so the new educational model currently must meet all these expectations. We've got 13 curricula. We're adding additional 20 this year. We already started here as part of this experiment. So the basic idea is that in the foundation of the two tracks, they're not going to be specialized training and baccalaureate, but there's going to be a single higher education and one specialized, because the market didn't really accept the baccalaureate too well, because the bachelors are not very much happily being hired in the financial industry. You know, bachelor's degree is not something that the market is ready to accept. Now, the substantive question is, if the basic education is to be flexible in between 4 to 6 years, who is going to decide on the length of time? And what is going to be the basis for such a decision? If we let the employers decide everybody would study for 3 to 4 years, express programs. Universities, definitely it would be 6 years, and additional master's degrees. So the only answer that we have come to in this way is to rely upon the national qualification framework and certification framework, and to limit the period of education to the structure of skill and qualification that are to be defined with the professional community. So the structure is currently being updated, and I call upon the community representatives here to participate in making this system emerge, because the length of education must be related to the level of qualification that we see in different trades, which relies upon 3 pillars: the complex level of this activity, the scientific content of it, and the professional acumen. Maybe for insurance 3 to 4 years would be enough, but we have a lot of science in it, like for example AI and database and big data, that may take 5, 6 years. But if you don't do this work together with us, along with us, then your industry won't enjoy a differentiated system or new standards that it will take us 4 to 5 years to train people that you need together with you. The second difference of this new model, active engagement of employers in this training. So this flexibility must be brought about, and that would set specific targets for the market application, professional examinations that is being involved in designing specific curriculum, and that is identifying the qualification and certification level for which educational programs should be cut. Mind you, this is very much a joint kind of an endeavor. One must not expect that somebody else will do it for you, otherwise nothing will happen. Henceforth, micro-qualifications should ensue, which would make it possible for somebody to join the labor market much quicker. And so changes in the legislation are going to be prepared so that the students in an educational institution can get this kind of a macro-qualification if he decides so, and stop education in terms of the intense way after the second year of education and go and get a job. So these kind of approaches should be available now. Something that involves more science and more kind of a special education in between 2 to 3 years would be made part of the master's program. So that is the way the system is currently being designed. I would say that technologies today do impact the financial area specifically, and as Mr. Auzan, I do also believe that over the past 40,000 years, human beings haven't demonstrated such a quick change and the need for such a change. But for basic components of the human life change, life and death, living and not living, artificial production of embryo, then the ability to conserve the body and brain when inside the animal body, human organs are being produced, and so the boundaries in between the animal and humans have changed, and implants. And so in this sense, AI is one of the tools to broaden the human capacity. And I believe that we're currently passing through a complex transformation in education in terms of how to better master and use this instrument
to expand on the human abilities, skills, and benefits. Thank you so much. We primarily have spoken about employees for financial organizations, but there is another aspect to it in education, which is financial literacy and financial culture. So, to what extent this is important? This is the question to Mr. Auzan, because you were actively involved when the Central Bank and the Ministry of Finance were developing the strategy of financial literacy and culture up to the year of 2030. How do you see the financial literacy and culture impact upon the education in the financial sphere? Thanks very much, Elvira Sahibzanovna. I believe this is a very important transition that the financiers must understand. Because before now, we thought that it would be enough to introduce educational standards, to establish the educational system and make information easily available to human beings, which would improve a human security inside a financial system. Listen to me. Since 1990s, since the era of the financial pyramids, I saw people who knew that one should not take money into the financial pyramid. But nevertheless, they will do it first time, second time, third time. So it is not about knowledge. This is about financial culture. The behavioral values and drives that the humans are demonstrating. So I'm extremely grateful to the Central Bank and the Ministry of Finance that this particular viewpoint has been raised to the top level of awareness, that it's not only about the financial literacy, but about financial culture. We've done a lot about financial literacy. We've got a big and broadest possible set of tools available to people. But one has to deal with a different kind of problem simultaneously. What does it mean? It means that one should educate people in terms of the long-term planning, otherwise we would all be covered by the half-yearly deposits in the bank. It means that you need to improve confidence in financial institutions and interpersonal confidence and trust, because without it, you don't expect the complex financial systems to appear. But what I specifically would say about the educational programs, listen, I've got this worry that the behavioral finance is something that is not broadly taught at the university level. But the behavioral economics is something that has advanced very, very substantively over the past decade, because we know where are the mistakes that each of us are making. We know how to mix such mistakes using nudging and creating a menu in such a way so that a human being would be able to dodge the traps and pits and falls. So we must institute here a reset which not only would improve an individual's security in the financial system, but would result in the overall economic development, because long-term human expectations, this is a proper bet upon the economic development of this country. Thank you so much. Well, dear colleagues, I think we should round up. And let me, I will start wrapping up with what I've originally started this panel. You know it yourselves that the financial sphere, financial organizations desperately need personnel. Yes, educational system changes, it needs time to do that. And that is why we see that many financial institutions, they start solving these problems themselves. Otherwise, we are going to be up against many problems. And innovations without a well-advanced educational system, without a well-advanced employment system is impossible for the future of finance. Like we heard the statistics of unsatisfied or dissatisfied employers, that is a bit of a diagnosis. And so the employers roll up their sleeves and go for it themselves, trying to develop various forms and various solutions questions that we hear about from the employers and the educational institutions who prepare people to be employed by the financial institutions. Forms can be different. Some have already been acknowledged and accepted. Basic departments and partnership, more active employers go into the universities, churning out joint projects. But different areas that we've gone through today very much resonate with everyone, I'm sure. This is very much practice-centric education, customized to specific professional needs. That is when the employers penetrate educational institutions at an early stage of training without waiting until somebody would graduate and come to them. Also, financial literacy means the ability of school children to make a well-informed choice. Then the educational environment which promotes this, and not least important issue, the one that we didn't dedicate much time to, various funding solutions, so as to make sure that additional education, additional training, active engagement of employers in such programs are also the solutions that must be given the right acknowledgement. Of course, we expect that the representatives of the financial industries will be more active in cooperating with educational institutions without overlooking the trends that we note right now in terms of the upgrading the certification systems, which state the kind of qualification that you're attaining. I mean, the fact that the employers currently give us as what they need, that is what we're going to get at the graduation level. So these all points are similarly important. I would like to thank all of our panelists for their individual contributions into this, and for all of those in this room for your patience and your attention. Thank you so much.